All right. Welcome, everybody. I am really so thrilled to be here with you this evening for this conversation, or if you're watching the recording. This is a topic we've been wanting to talk about for a really long time, and one that is really an exciting one for me as somebody who is not as adventurous as all these other moms. But thanks for joining us. My name is Gabi, and I am the co-founder of DEE-P Connections. When we've been around for coming up on 4 years now, really focused on sharing resources to help parents of caregivers who've got medically complex kids to feel empowered to best care for and advocate for their kids. So today's session is, of course, about traveling with our medically complex kids. And this is something that I have not been brave enough to do too much. We do a little bit, but I'm really, really excited for you to hear about the adventures these moms take their kids on and how they do it and what it looks like, and to give their tips and tricks to you. I also want to introduce Shannon, who is our new DEEP staff member, who is going to be co-hosting with me today and kind of has been doing a ton of the behind the scenes work to get this ready. So thank you, Shannon. We're so glad to have you with us. If you see postings and stuff going up, that's all Shannon. So hooray for having you
I
with us.
love Instagram.
She loves Instagram. And most of these other moms do. They do a lot of the storytelling. So we can, we'll be making sure that you can find their Instagrams as well, so that you can follow them as they take their journeys. But just a little bit of a quick housekeeping, which is that today's session is being recorded. It will be added into our resource center within a few days. And if you are joining us not as a panelist, if you don't see yourself on the screen, don't worry, your camera's off, you're muted. You can be with your kids who are screaming and doing whatever, and not worry that we can hear you. I'm just going to go ahead and hand it over to Shannon to kick us off and introduce us, have us introduce all of these amazing moms who are joining us tonight.
Yeah, so I'd love for everyone to go around and tell us a little bit about yourself and your kiddo, maybe how big they are, so everyone kind of can maybe pick a mom to relate to if they're carrying around a kid the same weight or height, and maybe a little bit about their diagnosis and kind of what you guys love to do as a family. So who wants to go first? How about you, Heather?
Yeah, I'll go first. I'm Heather. I have a almost 5-year-old named Tate. He actually has a birthday next week that we're looking forward to. Tate has a trach, a GJ tube, and is wheelchair dependent. He has a rare genetic condition that caused a form of epilepsy. So he just needs pretty much total care, total lift. And then also I am located in Missouri in the United States, kind of like smack dab in the middle of the United States. So that kind of tells you where I'm at and what kind of travel we do. We'll get into what kind of travel I do later.
Yeah. Grace, I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, so my name is Grace. I have two kids who are trach, vent dependent, G-tube, nonverbal, non-mobile. Paxton is 15 and he's just around 70 pounds. And Irene just turned 10 and she's around 45 pounds. So we have all of that going on. And then we have a 1-year-old who is a typical functioning, just busy bee. So we love to travel all over the state. They have PCH1B, or all over all the states, but PCH1B, which their cerebellum is smaller and it kind of continues to shrink. So that controls a lot of your limb function. So that's what goes on with our two.
Awesome, thanks. Christy, how about you?
Hi, my name is Christy Cook. We share on social media as Accessible Adventures. I feel like sometimes people don't know my name because of that. My son Robbie is 9 years old and he's about 4'7" and 65 pounds. He is a wheelchair user. Just in the last month, he started taking like his first steps. So he can go about 5 feet. That's it right now. He's G2 dependent, nonverbal, and about 24/7 care.
Awesome. Okay, how about you, Val? I call you Val because I feel like I know you because we met her.
My name is Valeria. My son Yaroslav, he just turned 6. He has a very genetic condition, lissencephaly, which is impacted his brain formation. Because of that, he also is diagnosed with Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, which is uncontrollable epilepsy. So we have our life is slowly getting more complex. We just introduced G-tube. We're doing the VNS for seizure management. He is nonverbal, non-mobile, wheelchair dependent, and he's 17 kilograms, which is like just under 40 pounds, and a very long kid, over 1.2 meters. So we're here trying to manage as much as we can, but also traveling and sharing the world with our boys, because we also have a 4-year-old who's a super busy guy as well.
I love it. All the busy kids, for sure. Well, I think we want to start by the first big topic is it's always the planning, right, that we have to do before the actual trip. And that's sometimes like the biggest part of it. So you're set up well to even be able to enjoy being away from home with your kiddos. So the first topic we're going to talk about is planning for accessibility. And yeah, how about Heather, did you want to share some of the resources that you use when you guys are planning?
Yeah, so we do a lot of travel either through camping or with an RV or just by car. We don't do air travel. So all of my travel consists of loading stuff up and taking it with us. For accessibility, I always just try to think about like what activity we're doing, or what activities we might be doing whenever we go somewhere. And so sometimes I might call the place and kind of ask some questions, but really I just try to think about like, are we going to be in a place that's mostly paved? Will we have to off-road it all? Tate has a few different options, luckily, for getting around. So if it's a paved place or there's going to be lots of concrete, his wheelchair is a good option. We can get everywhere we need to go. But as wheelchair moms know, you can't get into mulch or rocks or any kind of thing like that whenever you're in the wheelchair. So if we are doing more of an outdoor activity, or in the summer, we tend to use a tomato jogger a lot more. We have the jogging stroller, so the 3 wheels that we can air up the tires. And then we also have a Wonderfold wagon. And so just really thinking about what it is that I want to accomplish while we're out. Some of those have shade with them, some of them don't. And so I really just try to do a lot of pre-planning, thinking about what he might need whenever we're there. The Wonderfold also has a lot of space for packing things in it. So if I'm going to need to carry my own chair or a cooler or a fan for him or things like that, then that's a better option because it has all these attachments and places that I can shove extra equipment. So I do that. And then another resource that I wanted to share, I won't say I've used it before because I haven't, but I did stumble across it and I think that it has a lot of potential, is a website called Accessible Go. And I think Shannon might send it out in the follow-up emails or notes or something. But it's a website who actually does like hotel booking, and you can filter your hotel search by like accessibility features that you need. Whenever I was browsing, they also have different like options for flights, for renting wheelchairs, for renting wheelchair vans, for renting vehicles, and it's all centered around accessibility. And then the other thing, which I do plan on using in the future, is they have city guides. And so in the United States, at least, they have several different cities across the US that they've kind of planned out vacations that are accessible. And so they give you the top hotels that are accessible, the top restaurants that are accessible, good ideas of like activities and things to do that are accessible. And so I really love that resource because I think that it kind of takes some of the planning aspect off of you, where you really don't have to take time to call those places or look stuff up. They just have it ready, which is awesome.
Yeah, that does sound really awesome. I know, Valeria, you guys have done international travel, and I love the story about when you took Yarrow to like the ruins or whatever. I'd love for you to tell that story.
Yeah, actually, I guess I'm a bit opposite of Heather. I don't pre-plan most of my trips, very spontaneous. But a lot of times it means while we're on the way something, we're just maybe trying to call and find out what's available, what's accessible. And I find a lot of places are very willing to accommodate as much as possible, even if they don't say they're per se accessible. But when we traveled to Greece, we knew that it's probably going to be a challenge just because of how it's an old city. It was never meant to be accessible. But what turned out is that even a lot of older European countries have signed up to become accessible, especially with their historical sites. So Pentagon, which is one of the Greece's main to see places, the old town, it's on the steep mountain that people climb up. What they have done is they put this elevator on the side of a mountain, which to me was just so amazing and mesmerizing. And a little golf cart takes you up to the elevator. Then you transfer to the little lift, a stair lift that takes you a little bit farther to the elevator. Just there are those steps of transfers, and just because how hard it is to get there. But once you're in the lift, you go up, they have paved through some of the stones to make sure that you're able to use a wheelchair and wheel up to some of those historical sites. But usually I find whenever you call a place to share what your needs are, everybody's very willing to find solutions, to find equipment that they're able to deliver, such as beach wheelchairs, pottery wheelchairs, so that everyone can enjoy the activity.
I love that. I think, Christy, you're probably a good resource to kind of follow up with that because I know you guys always are off-roading. So I'd love to share some of your planning or what you guys do before a trip.
Yeah,
all
I'm
over the place.
I have a type A personality, so I'm quite the opposite. And I love hearing like different sides and how we all do it. I 100% want to have a plan. So what I do is I will look at a specific town that we're going to or an area, look up things that are wheelchair accessible or stroller friendly. There are many more mom bloggers that are typing in stroller friendly on their blogs than there are people typing about accessibility. So you'll find more that way. We do a lot of road tripping with our son's Make-A-Wish camper. So we go to a lot of national parks. All of the national parks have accessibility guides online. Some of them even have where you can show up, and like Yellowstone has a whole booklet that you can get from them that highlights every set of stairs and maps out the entire park so you know what to do. A best practice of mine, as I'm calling ahead or finding these locations, I will go on Google Maps on my phone and hit save for later. And then once we get there, I can pull up my map and it'll have dots in all these areas. So I don't like to plan out my day because I have a medically complex child and just children in general and say, we're going to do this at 9 and this at 1 and this at 4. That never works. Instead, I have a map and it's like, hey, we're in this area today. Here's what's in this area around us that I know that we can do. Because I don't like showing up places and then getting turned away, or we find out that his wheelchair can't go there. And we can talk about adaptive equipment, a little bit, but as far as just like traveling with a wheelchair, which is what so many of us do, I feel like having that plan and just knowing if we're in this general area, we have options. And then if we head over this way, we have more options so that when we're there, we're never bored.
I love that. Grace, I'd love to hear if you have anything to add, especially with 2 trait kiddos. I know that that's a lot. Probably would make sure you have power and everything that's, needed with all their equipment.
That is important. Luckily, their ventilators both last roughly 10 to 12 hours now that we have a new updated one, but we used to definitely be in that. It lasted about 2.5, Paxton's very first one, since he is 15. The older models did not last as long, so that was always super important. But I'm a little bit, I am not as much of a planner. I'd like to know where we're going, but what we're going to do tends to kind of just be more spur of the moment as well. So We always make sure that we plan when, at least like if we're going to one location, maybe we know we want to do certain things, we always plan an extra day just for letting them rest up from traveling too. So where they can just kind of chill, hang out, whether that be in a hotel or whether we have a Greyhound bus that's been converted to an RV. So whether it's resting in there, but one day where it's just chill, nothing for sure, is something that we always plan.
And I think it's worth mentioning too, Grace, you guys do extended trips, right? Like several.
Yeah, so like
Right.
we leave a week from tomorrow, and we won't be back for five weeks. So we'll be traveling for the next 5 weeks in the Greyhound bus. So yeah, we do long travel, but then I mean we do shorter trips, but the summer tends to be all travel. The minute I'm done with work, we load up and we go until work starts back up.
Wow, I love it.
Yeah,
5
yeah.
weeks. I mean, that's a lot of stuff to take with you, which we'll get
Yes,
into
and we'll get into
later.
that later. Yes.
Okay, so the next topic I wanted to talk about, which we did get a lot of questions about this, is planning for equipment. I know most of our kids hate their stander or hate, just different things, but some of the things are very necessary for us to take with us on trips. And like Heather was saying, like different options. And they're not flyers, but like if you're flying with your family and you're just thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to take the tomato chair and the wagon and the wheelchair? And you're thinking of all these things. So I'd love to hear things you guys do, whether you're renting equipment or borrowing, or I'd love to hear. I know Heather has a story about borrowing some equipment. So if you'd love to tell us about that, it'd be great.
Yeah, and like Shannon was saying, there's times you are traveling and you're going a long ways from home, so you can't take it all. Like for instance, we're traveling to Florida, which is about 12 hours from us this summer. And so I've already decided that we are bringing our wheelchair because that's not something that, it's custom to my son. It's not something that I can get when we get there, but I would be able to rent something whenever for like rent a wagon for the beach. So that's what we're doing this year is I'm bringing the wheelchair and then I'm getting on baby equip, like the baby equipment, not really meant for us medical people, but it works out that they have like beach wagons. That's what I'm going to do this time. But something cool that happened a couple of years ago when we went to Florida is I just joined, we go to the Fort Walton Beach area in Florida. I joined their like tourist page or whatever. So there's thousands of people on there. And I shared a picture of my son. And all I was asking at that time was where I could rent a wagon or where I could rent a beach wheelchair. And people were very kind and receptive and gave me lots of ideas. But something cool and unexpected that happened was a couple of special needs moms from that town commented and said, "Hey, I'm here. I'll bring a Peapod chair to your condo. I have a wagon that'll work for you. If you have any trouble with feeding supplies or feeding pump or anything like that when you get here, don't go to the hospital. Just let me know. Like we'll help you out." And so I know I'm a part of like bigger groups on Facebook. So Tate has a trach. I'm a part of Moms of Trach Babies. I'm a part of like our local epilepsy foundation stuff. So you could always post on there and probably find moms that are similar in those regions that you're traveling to. Or if that doesn't work out, just like I said, this random tourist attraction, somehow, I got connected with special needs moms just from posting what our needs were in Florida. So that is my tip, is social media connections.
If you
Yeah,
go on Facebook, Facebook has tons of groups. And if you look by either the city or the county, and type in like special needs parents or special needs moms of, you'll find a Facebook group locally. And I've seen multiple people pop in because we're in Colorado Springs. It's a big city. And they'll pop into that group and be like, "Oh my gosh, we're here. My son pulled out his G-tube." And they have like a line of moms that are like, "Hey, what do you need? We're going to get it to you. Where are you at? Are you in the north or the south area? We'll find the best person for you." So you can look specifically at areas that you're into. It's a great idea.
Yeah, medical moms are always willing to help. And yeah, but we've borrowed something too when we've gone on a trip, and really from an Instagram friend. I think I posted and they were like, "Oh, I have a tomato chair you can borrow while you're here." And always, just reach out to your community. Like everyone's more than willing to help. Because we've all been there and we all want our kids to have great experiences. And I think everyone's willing to pitch in and just make sure you have a great trip. So, Christy, did you have anything else to share about? I know you guys are always trying out all different pieces of beach chairs, all the hiking stuff. I see you guys doing all sorts of things with different equipment.
Yeah, I love equipment. I love adaptive equipment. I think that the best way to get your hands on things, and it's more like if you're planning a trip and you're like, I just want to go to this state or I just want to go to a beach, it makes it a little bit easier because you can look in that state and say, where are the adaptive sports programs? So if you look at adaptive sports programs or nonprofits in a certain area, there might not be one right next to where you want to go on the beach, but 3 hours down the same coast with the same view, there is, and then you pick a hotel there. So that is what we do. We've gone to Breckenridge in Colorado and we worked with their adaptive sports program and we got to try out a kayak that had, I called them anti-tippers and they laughed at me, but that is what they are. They're these big floating pieces off the back. And it made it so Robbie could lean over the side and touch the water and he didn't tip us out of our kayak. They had a huge paddle board that we could put his wheelchair on and they taught us how to do all of this stuff. There's a nonprofit locally that I've been talking about recently. It's in Idaho Springs. It's called Always Choose Adventures. And they have a free program for those with a disability. And you can rent out one of the extreme modus chairs. And it's an off-road chair. And if you come to Colorado and you're flying into Denver, it's like a straight shot into the mountains to get it. And you can take it for the whole week and go explore Colorado and bring it back. And they're not the only ones that have these programs. So we have a whole trip planned this summer. We're going through St. Louis and to Michigan and back. And on the way, we have different stops that we're making to try out track chairs and different adaptive equipment that they have at national parks, because some of those parks have those too, like the Great Sand Dunes in Colorado has their own off-road chairs that you can roll around in the sand. So that's why I like pre-planning so much, because otherwise I would go and then come home and I'm like, what, they had that right there and I didn't even know. I think it's really nice if you can look at those ahead of time and kind of be flexible with where you want to go and find someone that has the type of equipment that you need.
Yeah, I mean, who knew? There's so much out there. It's really just about finding the resources, and hopefully we can, I know a big passion of DEE-P is just to share those things with, so it's not, you're not having to dig. And I know Christy's great about that, sharing on her page, and all these moms, like, follow them all and they'll, just follow them on their trips. It's been so cool watching everyone just do their thing. I just love it. And but for the stander, I mean, give your kid a break for the week. Don't make him do the stander. I don't know. But I'm sure there'd be someone to lend you one if you really wanted to. I know someone had asked about that.
Something that just popped into my head. I'm sorry,
Huh.
I'll be fast.
No,
That we
go ahead.
haven't is bathing. I know that's kind of a scary thing is
Mhm.
I'm like, my kid has a huge bath chair that he uses at home, but like if we're gonna take all like his wheelchair and all that, we can't pack that. So like my kid gets sponge baths when we travel. Like that's the best we can do. And but also something I found is, being from hospital stays and stuff, they have like the rinse-free wipes or whatever. And so they actually sell those on Amazon. They're just called, like, I call them camper wipes because we keep them in our camper. But they're the rinse free, they suds up, you don't have to wash them off. And so that's how we bathe my son. If I was going for 5 weeks, I probably wouldn't do that, but just on our little week long thing, I'm like, he'll be fine.
I love that. Thanks, Heather, because I mean, you're right. I mean, we've gone on trips with Zoe for just about a week, and she could hopefully last that long if we bathe her right before we leave, right? And then you just kind of do a wipe bath or whatever. But yeah, I love those foams and the the little cloths too. I always loved getting those in the hospital, and we would keep them. Grace, do you guys take your
Yeah, I was
cherries
gonna
with
say, since we
you?
talked
How do
about
you
the
guys do it?
5 week part, and I have a 15-year-old, so that means we're going through all the smells, like, and everything. So we do not last 15 weeks. We could even last a week with that kind of bath. That is, Heather, how we did it in the past. But the caps, with the shampoo built in, like in the hospital, those are great for the hair, and especially boy hair, like that works.
Great.
It's short anyway. But we have an outdoor shower, and since when we're traveling, we don't do 5 weeks in a hotel. It's always the camper when it's the extended ones. So they have their floats. You can see them in the picture that was posted earlier. So we can set them in that, and we have like a pool, like a blow up little pool that you can put at the campsite. And then we have an outdoor shower. So we sometimes do it that way, or one of us just holds them and they can just wear their suit. Nobody needs to know. And wipes can do other body parts and things like that, or the sponge bath for other parts. But really, to get the teenage smell, we have that. So we have kind of the little blow up pool that we can shower them in right there at the camper. And then it works because you can dump it, and the 1-year-old can float and play in the pool when we're not going places. So serves both purposes.
I'm glad we covered that topic, because that is, you think about it, but we didn't actually think about it until just now. So I'm glad we thought about it. Grace, if you could start with this next topic, is planning for a medical emergency. Because I know, Grace, you said that you guys have like a plan written out and things in place, especially for your kiddos, since they're very complex with everything. So I'd love for you to share kind of what you guys do.
So the only planning part that I do like in advance for sure is we do always know where the local hospital is. Like, we know where the closest hospital is. That's something that we do always make sure we're aware of. But we also make sure in advance to get insurance overrides. So that involves the doctor and the insurance, to make sure we're getting overrides for vacation, which is definitely something you want to look into. Which we didn't talk about this earlier. So this is new for my part, but not all plans cover that. So that is something to be aware of. So that's something to really reach out for in advance. But
Grace,
vacation overrides that way.
can you share what that means? Is that like, so if
Yeah,
you're like,
so
out of
it's to
state-
make sure that we can get all of their supplies like extra in advance, right? Because typically you get a month's supply for meds.
Right.
And for DME equipment too, like for the trach and the vent, all of that, we get 1 month at a time. And so like, we're going to be gone longer than a month. So I need extra. So, or it's not time to renew, and it would be partway through, and getting prescriptions sent to other locations can be a pain. So calling your insurance and getting that vacation override, sometimes depending on what the med is, the doctor also needs to get a prior authorization to allow insurance to give the vacation override. So that's something you do want to plan ahead in, like a couple weeks before you leave. So we make sure we do that so that we have more than we would need med-wise, since they're G-tube fed, all G-tube supplies, everything like that. And then we also work with our pulmonologist, and he will write like a standing prescription that we could have sent somewhere for an antibiotic, in case we're like, hey, we know they maybe aspirated on some feed or something happened like that. Then he can just have it ready. Whoever's working, and they just send it, and we can go pick it up wherever we're going. So we don't have to like wait to hear back from him and this and that. Like, it's just kind of there in case we need it. So we always make sure we have that in case we need to get the antibiotic, and then we would just come home early or something like that. But we work with them to set all of that up in advance too.
Yeah. I'd love to hear, Valeria, when you guys did your international trip last summer, what did you guys have in place, like plan wise? And I know Yarrow got sick, right? I can't remember. Something happened. I remember that. I'd love for you to share about that as an international traveling, what do you do?
Yeah, for sure. So for planning, we definitely do a lot of like meds planning. We are in Canada. Everything is covered by the government. It's per month. So for sure, when we're traveling, I want to have a supply in hand, as we did have a situation when we ran out and we were in States. So definitely it was very stressful. We also always carry with us his care plan. Uh, because sometimes when you travel, especially through airports, not everybody is aware of what's medical equipment is for. At that time, Yarrow had an NG tube, which is a feeding tube through the nose. But on the border, we were stopped for not having kind of oxygen approval. And thankfully, I had my letters on hand saying, no, this is a feeding tube. This is nothing related to oxygen or any breathing situation, just because, sometimes on your phones or digitally, you can't always upload while you're in a different country, you're not connected to different carriers. So just having a kind of like a copy when crossing borders is a good idea. And definitely having all the required letters for bringing the medication, as some of these are controlled substances for seizure medications that are not as allowed in different countries. So always making sure you have doctor notes available for every medication. And yeah, when we got Yarrow had pneumonia when we were in Greece, again, thankfully we had all the letters explaining his medical care plan. We were able to just go to a private hospital where the doctor kind of took some time to scan through his history, but after a while he was able to treat very promptly. We didn't have any complications with proper antibiotics. And I think it was overall a very smooth experience, considering that once we went to Dominica and we have been in ER with people speaking Spanish to me, which I don't understand, and also trying to figure out what is happening. Just because it was our first trip, we didn't know what to bring, what to have on hand, and the situation just went in the wrong direction. So now having all of my meds with me, even when we're going to the hospital, just because hospitals might not be carrying those medications. For midazolam, which is our rescue medication, is the nasal spray. Sometimes they don't even have the adapter itself because they would do it through the IV. So having all the little pieces on you kind of at all the time is my recommendation.
Thanks for sharing. I know we had an experience too when we were in Puerto Rico when Zoe was early diagnosed and she had to go to the ER in Puerto Rico, and it was very similar to probably your Dominican experience, where it was just, I didn't know what was going on. Everyone wasn't speaking the language. They were disappearing with Zoe. I didn't know where they would took her. It was very traumatic. And so from there on out, we make sure we have a plan. And I never let her out of my sight after that, but it was just having a plan and having your care plan written up is really important. Does anyone have anything else to
I'll
share?
add something too. Yeah, because when Elliot was smaller, we did do a couple of trips to Mexico or wherever. And what we did is we also worked with our hospital team to contact local hospitals where we knew we were going to be, so that in advance they had some sense of who we were and shared some information in advance and kind of already were primed. And some teams are willing to do that, especially, if they can make connections and know about that. So I think that's really important. And then Valeria, you brought up such an important point that I think we should make sure that everybody latches onto, which is this idea of carrying your meds with you all the time, right? If you're flying, don't pack meds in packed bags, don't pack formula in packed bags. You can bring more stuff and have liquids and all of these things if you have doctor's notes, right? So don't ever let those things out of your sight, because if a bag gets lost, then it's trouble.
Add on this point that when you can reach out to the flight companies, they would allow additional carry-on bag. They could even allow like the bigger size the bags on boards for the medical equipment, as long as you have the doctor's note. So when we're traveling to Greece, I brought a month's supply of formula. Like imagine that whole carton in the luggage. It was super heavy, definitely exceeded the 10 kilos limit. They definitely allowed it. We had all of our drugs on board with us. And yeah, it was all arranged ahead of time. And also to add to the point of working with different teams, medical teams overboard, it is important to connect them, because when we had the experience in Dominica, part of the stress came that the doctor believed that our home team didn't prescribe severe medications appropriately, although they don't really know my son, but they were trying to get him started on like different seizure meds. So that's just having the teams connect and kind of talk to each other while taking yourself out of the picture a little bit, but also advocating for your child. As in other countries, the medical system is a bit different, where it's kind of the top down, where the doctor tells you what to do because you're just the patient.
Yeah, we do some extended trips as well. So to piggyback on some of the stuff that Grace and Valeria were saying, we cannot get prior approval for like to get all of the medication before we leave for a month. Our insurance is one of those that does not want to cover that, but they'll ship it anywhere. So we're having to have it shipped to someone that is on our route that luckily we are going to see, because shipping it to a random RV site would be terrifying, because they have to sign for it. So that's something that we've juggled ahead of time. And then also something that I always recommend is if you can get your prescription set up on 90 days, all but one of my sons can be 90, do that. Then you only have to deal with it every 3 months. It makes it much easier if you're trying to plan things. We've also, like if we knew we were gonna go to Florida and my parents live there, we've just shipped his diaper supply there for the month. Or shipped his G-tube supplies there for the month. And then we didn't have to carry it all with us, because everything does fly for free if it's medical equipment. Another tip, do not put anything else in the medical equipment bag, because they will look. And if there's anything else in that bag that is not medical equipment, it does not fly for free, but there is no weight limit. So we've flown with formula, with diapers. My son has adaptive equipment. I know people that have flown with adaptive wheelchairs and put them in big bins. There's even someone who shares that they fly with like a bath chair. They break it down and put it in this huge bin and it flies for free. Something that our doctor does now that our old doctor didn't do, she specifically writes in our letter of medical necessity that we have, that we carry with us, that his medication cannot be separated from him, because if his medication were separated from him and anything were to happen to it, he would end up hospitalized and it would be their fault. And she clarifies that like in a line in the letter. So if we're on board and they're like, oh no, someone's stuff doesn't fit, you know, we're taking some of this stuff and checking it, not our bag. I have a letter stating that they can't do that. So I feel like that is very helpful as well. We also travel with a safety bed that folds into a suitcase, which is great. And that has a letter of medical necessity as well, because again, it looks like a tent, like a sleeping tent. So when they open it up and at TSA or like at the counter, they look at it like, I don't know if that's medical equipment, but it is. My son has seizures and he would elope. So he has to sleep in that. So I think that having that advice and being in connection with your team of doctors ahead of time so that they know that you're going somewhere and they can support you is super important.
Yeah, I love that. Heather, do you want to share the app that you use to kind of keep everything, written down and the care
Yeah,
plan?
so I mean, I think all of us medical moms probably have like the binder or whatever of all of our kids' medical care plans. But in the last few years, I found an app called Mijo. I think, or maybe it's My Mijo. But it is a digital caregiving app, and it's actually created by a medically complex, actually two medically complex dads created the company. And it is the most thorough app that I've found. I've looked at a lot of different ones. But it'll take you, a little bit of time to set up. Yes, Mijo is the app. It'll take you a little bit of time to set up in advance, because you have to go in and enter all of your child's information. Off unrelated to travel, I call it my If I Die app because all of my son's stuff is in there. So someone should be able to pick this up and take care of my son, no problem, because we have everything in there. It is digital, but you can also like print it too. And so, the other cool thing is you can like share it. So you can send it to hospital staff if you were somewhere. A lot of times I just give them my phone and they like scroll through his medicine, all of those things. But it's a great app. That's how I keep track of everything and I don't have to carry, which I don't travel internationally. Like Val was saying, it's good to have a good copy. You are able to print this. I don't usually travel with copies just because I'm in the States and can pull up the phone pretty easily. But that's how we have all of our information stored. The other thing I wanted to mention that hasn't been touched on is DME companies. I don't know if I have a really good one, or we all have issues with DMEs. I don't know if I have a really good one or if all of them are like this, but we've had really good luck with our DMEs whenever we've had issues with equipment or something breaking. There's been instances where they've like met me halfway. If I'm within a few hours from home, they've met me halfway and dropped something off. I was a couple hours from their location and they brought something to our campsite one time instead of bringing it to our house. And then also, whenever I was traveling out of state for the first time, I was speaking to them just about being kind of freaked out about it. And they just reassured me. They're like, our job is to make sure you have what you need. So if something happens, call us. We have connections across the country where we can get you in touch with another DME. And like they were telling me basically like they can exchange oxygen and stuff like that with other DME companies. And so I think it's important to think about that as well, that like you're not completely isolated or on your own. There are, it is their job to help you and make sure that you have what you need.
Yeah, that's some, and that kind of leads to, we've been touching on packing a little bit, which is a big topic of like packing all the things. And I know like I said, we've touched on it a little bit, but I'd love for everyone to kind of go around and share, take a few moments to share what you do, what it looks like for your family. I know like the RV moms, it's probably a little different than like traveling internationally. Or just traveling by air. But I'd love for you guys to go around and maybe Grace, you can start and just share what you guys do. I mean, 5 weeks, you're taking the whole house. I know it.
We are like Heather and have an amazing DME company. They are amazing. They've definitely hooked us up with donated equipment that people have donated back. And so our RV is stocked with the same equipment as our house. So luckily, we don't have to transfer anything other than the actual ventilators themselves. And luckily they have 2 each. So we always have a backup in case something were to happen, because we have had that. Last summer, one of ours just up and quit in the middle. We were in the pool and all of a sudden it quit working. So luckily we could run and grab the other one. But yeah, so we stock always for at least like a week or 2 weeks extra when we're doing this long stay. And we take literally everything that we would get for a month, like diapers, everything, because having a 15-year-old, I can't really go buy. I mean, there are adult diapers, but his type, it's a little bit different. So like we stock everything in there, and that's why we like the bus, because if you think about a Greyhound bus, it has all that travel underneath, all that space. So it tends to be loaded with equipment. We always plan an emergency tub that has like a day or two. So if something were to happen in the bus, we can just take that tub. We tow our van behind it, and that stays in the van all the time. So if we were needing to just quick go, then we can go in the van somewhere and have that stock too. So that's always with us. And then, like I said, we always plan for at least 2 extra weeks just in case, supplies wise. And then for shorter trips, we always plan for a couple days extra though too. So always take more than you need, because you will probably use some piece of it or something will happen.
Yeah. And I will mention, Chrissy made an awesome packing list that we're going to share. I don't know, Gabi, are we sharing it like?
Yeah, we'll share it. It's
Yeah.
the website is being wonky right
So-
now, but if we don't share it today, we'll have everything up on the website and for a download. Yeah.
And of course, it's like, it's not super personalized to yourself, but it has everything on there. Chris, you did a great job putting most everything on there.
Some of it is not even stuff that we personally use. The way that we did it, it was actually last year. I asked our community through Accessible Adventures, like, what do you always forget, or what could you not forget? It would be a big issue, because we've gone on trips and like didn't have 2 eyes on the list, and I was like, yeah, you got that right, and he thought I got it, and I thought he got it, and then we were like, oh no, or we're trying to buy diapers at a store because we ran out. So now, as Grace said, 30% more is what I do. So however long we're going, 30% more than you think you'll use, you pack, because it's always like we have no issues, and then we get on a trip and it's like, oh, we've wet through all of our pajamas in 3 days. I don't know how that happened. Never happens at home. Like, or your G tube came out, we put in a new one and that one's malfunctioning. So don't just have one, make sure you have multiple of everything. So that goes for like our G tubes and extensions and diapers and wipes, clothes. We pack so much. So our trips usually look like we have big clear bins that we pack in. I find it easier to be able to see in and figure out where everything is. And we also travel in an RV. So we have stuff underneath every bed, underneath where the kitchen table is, underneath Robbie's bed. We're going for a month, so it is going to be packed to the absolute max. It's going to be a game of Tetris here coming up pretty soon.
I know, Heather, you mentioned you guys do like the clear bins too.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't have a lot to add because they kind of hit on all of the same points as me. I'm a big clear bin person as well. I feel like I separate them into categories of how I think about stuff at home. So this is his respiratory bin. This is his feeding bin. This is his diaper bin or whatever. Because that helps me, like, not only because I pack, but my husband has no part of the packing. And so I'm like, oh, go and get that out of the bin. And he doesn't have to wonder which one it's going to be in. Or if I need somebody else on the trip, like it's very easy for somebody else to pick up the care as well. And then I do the same as Grace. We don't get extra supplies from the DME, but through being on the social media apps and being in these different Facebook groups, a lot of times people are giving away like excess supplies of things. And so I will have them ship them to me, or I'm kind of a medical hoarder. And so just any excess that I can get, I have stored through the years. And we do most of our RV and camping in the summer. And so at the beginning of summer, I just fully stock the camper with all of his medical supplies for the whole summer. So to me, it kind of makes it more like a normal vacation where I don't have to think about all of the things. If we want to go every single weekend in June, every Friday in June, I'm not like, okay, I have to go through the packing list that Christy shared or whatever. I already have it packed. All I have to grab is like the feeding pump that we, of course, can't pack in advance, the ventilator that we can't pack in advance. So camping with a camper has taken a big stress off of vacationing for me because I'm able to do the work in advance and not have to do it every single time we go.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to hear. I know we talked about packing on the plane and for the plane, so I'm not really sure if there's anything else to add to that. I'm trying to think if there's anything. But let me know, any other people that have flown, if there's anything to add about packing for the plane or international trips or anything like that.
I can add that for ourselves, when I pack, unfortunately, we don't have a camper, although we just came back from an RV trip. And oh my goodness, I'm so jealous of people who have RVs.
You want a camper now? You want an RV now?
Yeah. Oh, so awesome. But when we pack for like just camping where we have to bring just bags or for international travel, I found that for each family member, those little packing bags where you can put clothes and then zip them up to make things more compact. So what I found, even organizing things like that for all the family members, and each member has their own colors. So if something happens, I need to get something out, I open a bag, I know where I'm looking. And usually having kind of the bigger bag with all the things, but also a smaller bag that's kind of available where I always have a change of clothes because of course things do happen on the road. We're driving today to a cottage, and of course the G-tube connection came off and the whole clothes of my son was in the formula. So on the road we had to quickly have something available to change up. But also, as Christy said, having extras of G-tubes, I have an emergency bag and a backup emergency bag, both having the seizure rescue medications as well as all of the G-tube things, as we did have that experience of having a tube pulled out and the second one malfunctioning. So we're using a Foley while we're away, and it's just a whole mess.
Yeah, always planning for all the extra things for sure. That's, I mean, it's kind of sucky. You have to bring so much stuff, but it's just, you know, you get used to it. This will be kind of a good transition to start talking about, we kind of change it to different modes of travel. I know we've talked a lot about you guys using your RVs and campers. There's some questions I see in the chat about traveling, plane travel. So I'd love, I can personally share on this too. Emma, who couldn't make it today because her kiddos were sick, they travel internationally at least once a year to the UK, so I can share some of the things she has said. But I'd love to hear, I think some people have mentioned TSA Cares. I think there's mixed reviews on them. We've used them personally. I don't know if you guys have. I just mentioned TSA Cares the last time we traveled with Zoe, and they were like, here, front of the line. And we were like, thank God, like it worked this time. But sometimes it's, you know, it's whatever. It's always worth it to give them a call. We'd already mentioned keeping everything or packing everything with you. So I know someone's talking about I think they're on a long flight. So Val, if you want to share your guys' experience on your international trip. I know it didn't go super well or as planned, but I'd love for you to share.
Well, when we go on a long flight, sometimes it's hard to know which kind of equipment to bring, as Yar is not able to sit independently. So it's either we have to bring a car seat, but he does have very long legs, and you install the car seat and there is no leg room, especially if somebody reclines in front of you. There's just a scenario for crushing his feet. Of course, when you tell people to move up, not everybody is happy. So we found that upgrading at least his seat and one of us, myself or my husband, just so there's more leg room is helpful. But also I discovered those on Amazon, those little inflatable pillows where you can put it into the leg room. So it creates almost like a little bed for him. But of course, then the car seat is in the way. So sometimes we have to make this decision of, okay, I'll bring the tomato chair, which is much less supportive for him. But after the takeoff, which is the requirement for him to sit in a chair, I can take it kind of off, put it under the chair, and then create this little inflatable bed where he can rest, especially if the flight is an overnight. At one point, I have kind of risked it just because it was already flight back home. It was a third connection, and at that point, I didn't care. But we didn't bring any chairs on board. It was another overnight flight, and well, they couldn't really do anything. They just had to hold him as a baby, which we tried our best during the takeoff. And as soon as that part was over, we can lay him down in the seats for him to stretch out and sleep for the overnight. But it is a risk because they can kick you out of a flight. But also, we're so tired. We're like, oh, we don't care anymore.
Yeah, you have to. I know on our last flight we took with Zoe, it was a lot because she's was a lot bigger then, and it's much easier to fly when they're baby size and they can go easily in a car seat. I know I saw in the chat about pre-boarding. Yes, you want to do that. You want to ask. This is not the time to be shy or to be like, we can do it ourselves. When you're at the airport, tell everyone, I have a disabled kid. Like, tell everyone and get all the help you can, because that the last flight we took with Zoe, it took 2 women helping us onto the flight because we had our baby sis, and she had a car seat. Zoe had a car seat. We had our big stroller wagon that we put in a bag my husband put on his back while we're carrying Zoe and the baby. It was a circus. But we needed all the help to be able to get on the plane, put the car seats in. It was just, you need the extra time, you need the extra help. So don't feel like you can do it on your own. And if you can take grandma with you or someone else on the trip, do it because it will be helpful. I'm trying to think of anything else flight wise. Christy, do you have anything to add?
I wanted to have
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys share. We had talked at a different time, and somebody had mentioned things you can do to like keep your wheelchair safe, and I found that really helpful.
Oh yeah, sorry. I know someone asked that in the chat too. So what we did for Zoe is we created like a little card that I designed on Canva, but you can do it by hand if you want. Had a cute picture of her and it said like, this is my wheelchair, it's my legs, please treat it with respect, be kind and gentle with it. And just it's kind of a little, it gives them a connection to the person, and it's just not this heavy piece of equipment that they're lugging around, but it really is someone's legs. And thankfully we haven't had anything happen to her chair when we traveled. And then we put the tag on we have a Keen stroller wagon, and a little bit of damage happened to that, not enough to really break it, but I could tell someone was dragging it around. But that's helped us some. I don't know if anyone's done anything else. That's a big thing I've heard in the community that people do.
So we had, what we do is I don't let anyone take apart the chair because I did that once and then I got it back and it was like all dented up from them trying to put it back on when he was little. So we've only flown with him a few times. This last time I folded in the lateral supports and got his adaptive stroller folded all the way down, locked everything in as tight as I could, and then actually put like one of the Velcro strap like around with a buckle on it, and locked it shut. So I'm sure they weren't super happy when they had to like pick up the 60-pound thing and move it. But we couldn't break any of the pieces that are so easy to break, like the lateral supports and these hinges, because everything was folded in. I actually know another person that travels a lot, and he is an adult that has a power chair, and they actually use bubble wrap and like wrap up his joystick and some of the other pieces and like stabilize them with something like in the bubble wrap so that it can't break. Because it is their legs and it's super important. We have flown with Robbie in a car seat when he was younger, and that worked great. And we booked the very front row, so we had extra leg room. This last time, they told us his car seat was too big, which honestly we could have fought with him, but my husband was just like, you know what? Robbie can sit up. He just won't stay sitting up for a long time, but he does have trunk control. So TJ was like, it'll be easier. Just we'll let them take it. And then we brought his wheelchair to the gate. I am actually not a fan of boarding first. I am boarding last. So I will walk up to the counter and let them know, like we're in usually the second row, because then you can still put stuff underneath the seat, but you still have the extra room. And we'll tell them like, my son is in a wheelchair and we're going to board last. And we have this entire row. Because we're not bringing on a car seat or anything. It's just him. He's very loud when we're sitting still, and trying to get him into a seat and situated for takeoff when he can't just like be in our laps is kind of difficult. So we're the last ones off, and usually we're the last ones off though, but like we're the last ones on the plane, just by our choice. So I think you have to decide for your child what is better, and kind of go from there. The last time we flew, we had our daughter who was 1, Robbie, our Chihuahua, and our 11-year-old. So it was an absolute circus. My husband stayed out in like the little airway ramp thing, and I ran back and forth with all of our gear and bags. And I warned everyone around us, this is the time to be loud. I'm bringing in first my 11-year-old, my 1-year-old, and then I am bringing in a disabled child. He is big. My husband is carrying him, all legs and hands inside the aisles. Like we're coming in. And everyone was super receptive and really nice about it. And we got him in, and we'll buckle him into the seat, and he'll kind of sit, and like my husband just wraps his arms around him and kind of helps him up. And then as soon as we got in the air, we didn't have one of those inflatable things. I was kind of nervous because Robbie is 9, and he's 65 pounds, and I just don't know how that would hold him like it does these smaller kids. So my husband took the backpacks out from underneath the seat once we were up in the air, and we had one pillow, and he put the pillow there and like made a makeshift little lay down spot for Robbie, and he just kind of folded up and he slept the whole flight. and our 1-year-old was in my lap being an absolute terror. So it worked. But I think sometimes you just have to go and pack your patience. We called TSA Cares. I filled out all the paperwork. They did absolutely nothing for us. I've heard wonderful stories from other people, so I think it's worth doing, trying to get the help.
Yeah, I think it's, well, like what you said, pack your patience. It's just know it's not going to be smooth. It's not going to be, it's not going to be a perfect experience, but that's okay. That is just the mode of transportation to get you to where you want to go. And I wish there was better options. I know Delta's coming out maybe with a wheelchair accessible plane, which is awesome, where you can be in your wheelchair. So they're making moves, but very slowly. And it is what it is, but this will be a good transition to our next topic. But I did want to also mention, a mom told me way back in the day when we started traveling, always take a video of your chair and your equipment before you put it on the plane. In case something does happen, you have video proof and timestamp of like, this is what it looked like when I gave it to you. So just do that really quickly before you gate check it.
Before we move on from plane,
Yeah.
there was one question about diaper changes on a plane, which is,
Oh,
I think,
yeah.
really important because that is a complicated one. Certainly the bathrooms do not allow for that, but
When I recently just flew to Michigan, I was like, I thought of that question and I went to the bathroom and I was like, there's no way a child older than 2 would even fit in here. So I know, Val, I know you guys did diaper changes just on the airplane seats, right?
Yes, able to create that little bed. If your flight is 8 hours, like you gotta change the diaper and you gotta do what you gotta do. So we have a little like a cover, like a blanket where I try to cover up the private parts, make it as pleasant as for everyone. But for one tip I do myself, I usually give Yara suppositories so he can go do his things before we go. So on the flight, it's only like pee diapers and not would I need to deal with anything else. But also wanted to add that personally, and sorry, you might be hearing him on the background right now. But also for taking our wheelchair, I'm always so stressed about it. So we usually take it fully apart and put it in a big hockey bag and just give it in like that. So that way they're not able to break any pieces of it either way, just because it's already kind of taken apart, put in, all packed in. But they do have to carry this huge heavy bag.
You're so Canadian, a hockey bag. That's so Canadian of you. No, I love, and how, Chrissy, you mentioned you hear people doing the big totes. Like, I never even thought about that. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it would probably go under the plane, but
Yeah, they put them under the plane, and not with their regular wheelchair, but like all the other equipment.
right.
We've only done 4-hour flights, and we change right before we get on. And then we usually adjust the times of feeding so that we're like not gonna soak through when we're on a plane. I do have a friend that travels internationally, and she said that they bring a big blanket and they enlist the siblings and they go up to the front, right like where the bathroom would be, and then they just talk to the stewardess. And they'll hold each side, and then basically they're holding this up, hiding the child and the parent that's changing the diaper.
Like lay them on the floor of the plane.
Yeah, so they put like a blanket on the floor, and then they have kids hold a blanket, the siblings, and then they're, changing and doing what needs to be done because their son doesn't have the cognitive delays. So I feel like we have to take that into account too. If you have someone that has a physical disability without the cognitive disability, they would not want to be changed in the open. That has to be a complete and utter panic. So that level of privacy. Someone asked about the car cabana. We have a car cabana at our house. I think that's a great idea. And then having them hold it, I'm sure the stewardess would hold it and look the other way as well if you didn't have, other hands on board. But I think just communicating with your flight team if you're going to be on a long flight. We eventually want to go overseas. I'm so nervous.
That was always a dream of ours too, as Zoe, but I love seeing other people do it. And yeah, so I think
I'll just add one more thing, which is one of the things that we do when we're traveling around too, is that we will use pads, like put pads in diapers so you don't have to do the full diaper change and then just swap pads out just like.
Yeah.
our
I was going to
regular-
mention that too. We use like the little I don't know what they're called. There's a brand that they sell, but it kind of even just makes one diaper last a little bit longer. And not every kid can do that, but you know, that's another idea to maybe make it the whole 4 hours or the whole whatever
So
6-hour
we
flight.
also double diaper. So if you don't have those, or that's not something that like the fit works, we'll put a pull up and then put a diaper on top so that if the pull up starts to kind of get that dampness on the outside, and by the end of the 4 hours, it's all being caught in there. And then we just make sure that as soon as we get off the plane, we find somewhere to change, which sometimes that is difficult too. So planning ahead of time, if you are knowing the airport you're going to be in, do they have a full-size changing table and where is it at? Because like Denver has one, and I knew they had one, but I thought it was going to be easy to find, and it's like hidden somewhere. So I couldn't find it. And then I was in there struggling, trying to change diapers right before we got on a plane. So next time I feel like that would be helpful.
Yeah, oh my gosh, we could have a whole probably webinar about diapering and diaper changes and when traveling and all of that. So our very last topic is just talking about the risk and reward of traveling and making memories, and kind of just, I'd love to hear all of your guys' experiences and just, is it worth it? And I think everyone on here would definitely say it is. But I'd love to hear why you guys think it's worth it and what it's done for your family and all of that. So Grace, if you want to start, you're up at the top of my screen.
Okay. Yeah, so for us, with having one medically fragile child and then now having two, we have just always felt like we wanted everyone to see our kids, other kids included, and seeing that not everybody looks like we do. And so we also knew for us, we are not homebodies. Like that would give me anxiety, like not leaving. So we love to be out and about. And so our goal for our two kids, well, and now third kid having a 1-year-old, is we don't know what their life expectancy is. So it's putting a little bit of a damper on things, but we want them to get to all 50 states. Like that is our goal. We don't have international travel in ours at this point because, like you all stated, our two can't sit in the typical chair and they're too big for a car seat, even the special car seats. So flying is not an option for us. So our goal is all 50 states for them. So like Paxton's 15 and he's at about 38 of the 50 states. So, and we're going to be hitting a whole bunch of them. He'll be at about 45 at the end of July. So, so that's our kind of story for why we travel and what we do.
I'm sure now having your 1-year-old, it's probably just really awesome to take them around, and I know it's probably just as chaotic as it's like toddler,
Yes, it's
medical
planning now for toddler
kids.
too. Like what toys do we need? What things do we have to pack for that? What are going to be engaging in 5 weeks from now might not be engaging today. So
Well, and just making memories all together, like,
yes.
Even with your typical child, I think is so important.
Yes.
So that's awesome. Heather, how about you?
Yeah, I liked what she said, because international travel right now doesn't seem possible for my family either. And that's something that I wanted to make sure I touch on, is that if you haven't traveled before, I would not plan like a 10-hour away vacation, or I wouldn't plan an international vacation. For my family, we really had to start small. We weren't homebodies either. We were always on the go. We really love being outdoors. We love travel. And so whenever my son came along, it was kind of like a gut punch of thinking like, this isn't going to be an option for us anymore. And then I started seeing other people doing it, and I just figured it out. But the way I figured it out is I started small, and it wasn't even overnight trips. Like it started out as I wanted to go to the zoo, or we wanted to go to the lake for a day. And then the next time we did an overnight trip, and then we did like a little staycation. Our very first vacation was a staycation, and my son ended up hospitalized in the middle of it. And that's fine. I mean, you're going to have that, like, but I always try to remind myself that like Tate is going to have seizures, whether he's at home on our couch or whether he's in Florida on the beach. Like the things that happen in his life, it happens at home too. And so I always take that into consideration. Your vacation is not going to look like it did before having your medical kid, so don't expect it to. Don't get in a hurry. Always allow plenty of time. Someone mentioned this earlier, but I really try not to over plan myself or over schedule myself. I'm a person who, if I have something planned and it doesn't work out, like it breaks my heart. And so I've had to learn to be flexible. I look up like the area that we're going to and some things that I think would be fun. But again, like they said earlier, I don't really plan out, hey, on this day at this time, we're going to go do this. It's more like we wake up and we see what we all feel like as a family that day. And my son requires a lot of downtime. He requires chilling out. And so planning your vacation around what your family needs. My beach vacation doesn't look like it did before him. I don't spend sun up to sundown on the beach or whatever. We don't go, we don't do some of these adventurous activities. I make sure that I have a condo that has an ocean view, and I have a baby camera with me so that he's taking a nap in the condo and I can sit with a good book on the balcony and I'm still happy. I'm still at the beach. I'm still enjoying vacation, but it's a little bit different than what it would be if he was a typical child. So another thing I wanted to mention that we do is for road trips, like my son kind of taps out around 6 to 9 hours. Like he is done in his car seat after that. And then we start having like medical issues, behavioral issues, like things just start going south around that time. So we really try not to travel more than that allotted time for any of our trips. So something that I've done, we used to just take off and drive 12 hours to Florida. We can't really do that anymore. And so with everything in his life, I just say, try to make it fun. Like try to find a positive and a negative. So we can't do it all in one day. So I always like look at cool things to do along the way. So on our way to Florida is like the, Memphis Bass Pro Pyramid. My husband's a big hunter. So we might spend the night, or we have before we spend the night there. We find a cool restaurant, or if there's like a national park on the way, or this, I don't know, just any kind of thing. Look at your route, think about cool things. We do a lot of state parks. We'll stop for picnics, bring a lay down chair where he can like stretch out and kind of get a break from his car seat. And so that's kind of how we make the best of something that's a little bit rougher.
Yeah, I love hearing it. Christy, how
Shannon,
about
can I,
you guys?
real
Oh
quick,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry. I just saw someone put in the chat about bringing a caregiver with them. I wasn't sure if they meant like a family member or a nurse with them. And we haven't touched on that. My two do get nursing care. So like when I'm at work, there's a nurse. And so that is something that you have to check with if you're talking about a nurse coming, you do need to check with your insurance, because some insurances won't pay for the nurse across state lines in the US. So that's something that you would want to check with. And lots of times you do need to get that pre-approved. So like my kids go to a trach ventilator dependent camp where parents are not allowed to go with them. So we have it pre-approved that their specific nurses can go with them to camp. So like they'll leave this Sunday and they'll come back on Thursday, and it's all kids with trach and vents there. So like that the nurses have been pre-approved. So if they're talking about nurses, I would check with your insurance and your nursing agency, because there are limits to how many hours they can quote work. So then you have to think about, like we've talked with one, like then we would pay for her hotel room and things like that for her to travel with us, but then she can only work so many hours. So that gives her time to go do some things on her own too, but thinking about cost and pay with that. So there are limits to how many hours they can work, and sometimes insurance for state lines.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I mentioned earlier, like take grandma or your her friend or something too.
Right. You don't have to get necessarily
yeah.
that pre-approved like a nurse, but I wasn't sure when they used caregiver, which term they
Yeah.
were talking about.
Yeah, and I will say we'll probably take questions here in a minute if you guys want to put any questions in the chat. I'd love to hear from Christy just about like the risk, the reward, any regrets taking all your trips. I don't think so, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, not every trip goes as we want it to, but I still have no regrets. I think that our whole mindset changed a lot with Robbie as he got older, and we really started to like understand his diagnosis and recognize that like he has this form of epilepsy that is not going to be controlled. He's been on, over 15 different types of anti-epileptic drugs. He's had brain surgery. He has a VNS. Like we fought it for a really long time thinking like we're going to beat this for him. And once we got to the point where we're like, hey, maybe we're not. And maybe this means that his life expectancy isn't the same as a typical child's. And with that realization, we immediately flipped into, okay, so if we don't know how much time we have, what do we want to do? And I don't want all of his memories to be in a hospital or in therapy centers. I want him to have fun. Disabled kids are still kids. And maybe this kid doesn't get to live as long as my other kid does. So I want him to experience everything. And it's honestly bled over to our whole family and all of our kids because we have 4. And now they're all experiencing new things and traveling with us. And I know so many times I get people that reach out to me and they're like, but I don't know if my child would like that. Or maybe they would hate that activity. We've done some things that Robbie was like, it wasn't really his thing. And then we have tried things that he absolutely loved that we didn't expect. Like we just went on a hay ride and it's a hay ride and he loved it. And sometimes it's the simplest little thing. We went to Bryce Canyon and they have this like country music show and they were going to host our family. And I was like, we'll try it, but he's probably not going to sit through it. He hates going out to eat and it's just like food and singing. The vibes were amazing. He was giggling and laughing and he kept trying to get out of his chair so his dad would dance with him and he had the best time ever. So sometimes I feel like with our kids that are nonverbal, you don't know what they're going to love until you try it. So just try different things, and that could be around your house, around your neighborhood, with grandparents coming with you. That's how we started. We were like renting Airbnbs and inviting grandparents from both sides just to help us until we got, a solid footing, and now we can do it on our own.
Yeah, I love that.
My son really loves boat rides, and I would never know that unless we took him. And so, I mean, it's just, you never know what they're going to latch onto or like. And whenever they smile and experience something new, like there's just nothing like that.
Yeah, and it makes all the planning and the packing and the carrying them onto a plane, all the things, it makes it worth it when you see them experiencing the world in a different place other than your house and in their safe spot or whatever, near your children's hospital. It makes it worth it for sure. Val, I'd love to hear from you. I know you guys just did your awesome RV trip that I know was a bucket list thing for you guys. So yeah, I'd love to hear all your thoughts too.
Yeah, like everyone else. At first we were trying to beat epilepsy, but it was ending up beating us, and that really put us as a family into some dark spot. And then we realized, well, how it's time to change things, right? It's time to look forward to other opportunities, to things that we used to love before, such as traveling, camping. We started with doing camping trips very locally, and yeah, we're having a potentially limited time left. It's important for us to create those memories, especially with our little one who is part of this. And instead of being home in the hospitals and therapy centers, just like everybody else mentioned, we're now creating family memories. And maybe in the moment it's difficult, but we call it type 2 fun when you look at the pictures, you look at your memories, remember what you have done, what you have been through emotionally, and he's rolling, and I feel like he's gonna make me fall.
No, catch him.
Then it's all worth it, and
Yeah.
we truly enjoy just having those lasting memories with us.
Yeah, I love that. And I can touch on that because I don't know, everyone watching probably doesn't know my story, but Zoe, my medically complex daughter, passed away in March, and we did a lot of things with her. We did all the things, traveled, we did a cross-country road trip too with her. And I'll say, going back and looking through all of her pictures, I'm like, she had an amazing life. Like, we did all the things and we made tons of memories. And I don't, even though there was moments where my husband's like, we're never doing that again. I'm like, it made it worth it. Like, because the husband's always carrying them, and carrying all the heavy things, but it made it worth it. And you don't think about, oh my gosh, that was so hard. You think about, like, man, she got to see the world got to experience her and see her. And sharing about it online, you're inspiring other families that, like, oh wow, my kid does deserve to take space up in the world outside of their home and outside of the hospital. And I think that's so important. And yeah, I'm thank you guys so much for sharing. And I don't know if we have any questions, any other questions we haven't covered. I feel like we've been answering them as they've come in, but
A couple that I can throw out there for
yeah.
people that are interested in tracking. One of them is behaviors on planes and challenges. And I don't know if anybody's, I think started Christy talking about you don't get on first because it's just too much. If you guys can talk, how you maybe plan for that or manage expectations of people around you, or how you deal with that.
Yeah, so I think that it's just about communicating with those around you. And so far, we've been really lucky to have kind people next to us, and just explaining so they don't just assume the worst. This is my son, Robbie. He's 9 years old, but cognitively, he's like a 6-month-old. He is nonverbal and he doesn't understand all language. There are certain times when he vocalizes and it can be loud and it may be happy or unhappy, and we will try to intervene. We have a tablet and you're not allowed to play it out loud, but he doesn't tolerate headphones. So we can listen to Barney quietly or we can listen to Robbie. We'll let you choose. We just kind of talk to the people that are near us. We also typically will put him by the window and then my husband, so that if he is flinging hands or anything like that, he's hopefully not doing that, and being able to touch the person next to us. So far he has not kicked the seat, but these are some things that if he were to do, there's just not much we can do about them other than apologize and I offered the lady sitting next to me, I was like, would you like me to buy you a drink? Do you want a snack off of the cart? Thank you for your patience. And I feel like generally people are really good about that.
Yeah, I think explaining your child goes a long way. I mean, just like you would, I just flew with our almost 2-year-old and it was crazy. I was like, and I know it's hard because people have grace for a 2-year-old, but they might not for, a 10 or 11-year-old that they don't know why they're acting like that. So I think I love it. Yeah, I was talking. So just explaining, your situation, I think hopefully most people understand. And if they don't, maybe the stewardess can move them around. So I think that's, something that could happen for sure. Okay, any other questions?
Try to hit on more of these. Someone asking about what do you do about G-tube feeding at takeoff landing? I don't know if there's anything that you have to really change, right? They can still on their pump, they can still be getting feeds. Is anything that
I was wondering if they meant how some people might chew on gum or on a sucker for the ears.
Yeah, like the pressure.
That's where my brain went when I was reading that question.
Right, I think you're right.
Which again,
yeah.
I don't have an answer for because I don't fly with mine, but that's where my brain went with that.
I always thought about that for Zoe, and she never seemed to care. It never seemed to bother her. Maybe your kid might be bothered, but Zoe never seemed to care.
Somebody in the chat just said vent might help.
Oh yeah.
Idea is to really pressure. Valeria, you guys do what's
Yes, sorry, my connection is breaking up. We tried using those sippy cups, so when they're drinking, it kind of helps with releasing the pressure. But also I found since Yari had the ear tubes, it's not bothering him at all.
Yeah. We've just done massaging or move jaw around a little bit, just stimulate chewing that in the past, just to in the hopes that might, we've got a
Even maybe one
couple.
of the chewy toys, like if your kid can do something like that, stimulating just their mouth to move, kind of helps the ears pop and stuff. That's just a random idea that just came to my mind. So
So we've got a couple of questions that I want to, if we can, would be great. One of them is traveling alone. You're a single parent, or if you can't travel with a partner, can anybody ever done that? Is it feasible?
I've done it, traveled with Zoe alone. She was smaller, but I felt pretty awesome once I got to my destination because I flew with her and I had the car seat. She was small enough where I could wear her. So I don't have experience with her being bigger. But like I said earlier, just enlist the help of everyone. Like people will help you, the airport staff will help you, TSA, they'll help you, because it's hard. Like they want you to take them out of their chair and you're holding them the whole time. It's like stuff like that, like to push the chair through the metal detector. You just got to let them know, like, I can't hold my kid for very long. So you got to speed this up or, so yeah, I would just say it's possible, but I just definitely enlist the community, like the workers and the TSA agents. I don't know about traveling like in the car and stuff alone. I'm sure that would just be like making sure you take enough stops to take care of them and give them breaks. So
Has
I don't
anyone done
know.
that here? Done solo? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've just flown the one time. I probably wouldn't have
We
done it when she's bigger because it's harder for sure.
I always travel with a caregiver. I know that's probably not possible with everyone, but someone was asking that earlier, and I know that we all kind of feel that if you do have like nursing or something like that feeling of kind of losing your privacy or whatever. And so we are lucky enough that my mom is another trained caregiver along with my husband and I. So we don't usually take nurses with us, but since grandma can help too, she's usually who travels with me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, there's a really good question in here about how do you navigate the stress between caregiver, like parents, caregivers, partners in doing this because it's chaos and it's intense. Do you guys have any any advice on that, especially if you're doing it for 5 weeks or?
The only thing I would say is I think that we just kind of split up the roles differently. Like I'm the planner, preparer, packer. But then whenever we get there, like my husband does have to take a larger role of, lifting, carrying different things whenever we find a unique situation. And then another thing about my husband is he is a very like introverted, shy person. And so he loves my son, but we attract a lot of attention. Like that's just, there's no way that we're not going to attract a lot of attention. And it like kills him inside because he would rather like blend into a wall and not be noticed at all. And so it stresses him out. And so that's something that sometimes we'll like rub about is if we're out and about and I'm like like mama bear advocating like, no, we're going to do this, or we're going to park right here because this is, or like if he needs suction, like I'll stop right in the middle of a busy, I don't know, a busy walkway and like suction him. And he's like, we could pull over to the side or something. I'm like, no, we're fine. And so, like that's something that like I've had to realize that he really would rather us kind of blend in as much as possible, because that's a place where he really gets kind of stressed out, as if we are getting more attention than what we normally do.
Yeah. Anyone else want to weigh in? Those plane trips sound really intense. Christy, sorry.
I think communication. It's something that I feel like my husband and I have learned so much more since we've had our son. It's just so important to communicate effectively what you need, specifically what you need. Because so like my husband, for example, we just went on this trip and he's going to put Robbie into his car seat, and he has like a torn rotator cuff like in his shoulder. And as he went to lift him, he was like, man, it's like really hurting this time. And I immediately ran in and I grabbed him from his arms and just took him because he said it out loud. So if you say it out loud, that means you need help. This morning we're packing up and he's like, okay, you're doing this, I'm doing this, you're doing this, I'm doing this. And we were splitting up and I'm breaking down Robbie's medical bed and then I'm changing him and he's taking all of his medications and packing them up safely. And I'm like, hey, I still need you to do this. And we're just out loud talking back and forth, and just knowing that you're on the same team. So you're not ever against each other. You're against whatever it is that you're facing in that moment, but you're on the same team. Mindset really goes a very long way, and packing patience and being flexible. I can never say that enough because things are not always going to go the way that you want them to go. And you just have to be like, well, a bad day on the road is a better day than a good day in the hospital. That's the way that I look at it.
I think we haven't really discussed this either, but like something that we've talked about before is that like the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. The more you travel, the easier it is. And so something with like camping, it's like my husband knows like what his general like duties are of getting us set up, and I know what mine are. And so the first time, like she was saying, we had to really communicate to make sure. But now that we've done it over and over, like I kind of just know the stuff that he's going to take care of and he knows what I take care of, and it really does get easier. And that's kind of all of our trips now. We just kind of, we've worked together long enough doing this that we kind of know the flow of like how this is, who's going to load this and who's in charge of this, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, go ahead, Valeria.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that essentially same after doing a few trips, we have divided our tasks that it becomes like definitely a flow. But also it's that piece of admitting and having no shame and saying, listen, I'm tired right now, or I'm so frustrated that I need a break. Like, can you take the kids, or do you want to switch kids? Because like I cannot deal with the tantrums and and take a breather. And I think there's no shame in communicating those feelings as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's what someone had asked too. I would agree with you. That's what we tend to do too. It's been 12 years of traveling, having a 15-year-old. He got his trach at age 3, and we've just figured out what our roles are. So we know like he packs equipment, like the big pieces of equipment. I pack everything else. We know who's doing what role. But one of them was asking like, how do you balance like having a typical kid against with having the medically fragile kid and making sure they're both getting what they need. And I think that is a really hard balance. Like it is. I know that, I mean, even just having a 1-year-old, sometimes if I'm home by myself and he wants to go outside, we can only stay so far outside even then, because I have to make sure that the baby monitor can pick up alarms, because I never know, like if the other two are like, no, I'm tired, like I don't want to go outside. I don't want him to not be able to go outside, but we have to find that balance of like, okay, we'll go outside, but we're only going to go, we have to stay on the deck with the sand table and this, like, we're not playing like all the way down our hill in the backyard. So it's finding that balance with the kids. And then that's sometimes when I am lucky enough to have a spouse, then I can say like, hey, you and the kid go do this. And like one of us might miss out on some of the experiences, but that's okay. Like we kind of pick and choose who gets to have those experiences and who gets to have the experience back at the RV or something like that. But I don't think I have an easy answer for the single parent. There isn't somebody else necessarily, but I think that whatever memories you do create with your typical child too involved, they're going to appreciate that time that you got with them. So don't beat yourself up if it looks differently than what you thought it might look like when you were thinking about that. Do what things you can do, and they'll appreciate that.
Yeah. So I can add to that. We have 4 that we've traveled with all of our kids together, and then myself and my husband. So every time we plan a trip, they don't necessarily pick where we're going, but I'll say, hey, we're going to this area in Utah, and here's a bunch of stuff we can do. Or we're going to be in Washington, and here are a bunch of options. And we let our kids have a say. So as we're traveling, one day it'll be, this is our daughter really loves animals, and we're going to do this petting zoo, and everyone is along for the ride. And then the next day, my husband loves scenic drives, so we'll do that. And I will say that you should really add in things for yourself. for yourself, for your spouse, if you're on your own. Like we went to the Grand Canyon and our daughter was like 9, and by the 3rd stop, she goes, okay, well, it kind of all looks the same. Are you guys ready to go now? And our response to her was like, well, yeah, so today is our day and this is what we really want to do. And we're so excited about it. And yesterday was your day and we did this, and tomorrow is Mason's day. And then the next day we're doing this other cool thing that you picked. And she's like, oh, okay. And everyone's going on my day. And we were like, yeah, everyone's going to go on your day and we just have to support each other. And she was like, all right, I guess I'm in then. She's pretty quiet and just walked behind us, but she trotted along the rim of the Grand Canyon and she was fine with it.
Yeah.
So I think that
I like to kind of ask everybody, like, what's really important for you? Like, what does your dream trip look like? And if they just pick out like one thing that they're like, this is something I want to see or accomplish, like, you know, we can probably fit in like one thing for each person. And going back to like not over scheduling, but we kind of think about, well, I really want to go and do this whatever, and then my husband really wants to do this, and we don't overschedule, but we kind of have that in our heads and we can work in those activities. And then I have a typical son as well that's 9, and so making sure that he gets to do something fun that he is excited about. But I will say, I think we don't give our siblings sometimes enough credit, that if they are seeing their disabled sibling get to do something that they know is, you know, really kind of it's difficult for Tate to go to the beach, or it's difficult for Tate to go in the pool, like his sibling is just as excited for him to experience those things, or even more so than Tate himself. And so I don't think we need to worry as much about like, oh, are they going to have a good time? Because I think just spending the quality time and the memories, it all just kind of works itself out.
And I talked with, in preparation for this, I was talking with another family, and they said that, you know, if they're in a hotel, like sometimes like it's going to be a hard day and you just have to be okay and make fun of like staying in the hotel room and ordering room service and watching a movie. Like that can be fun. That's an adventure. That's just what has to happen on that day. So I think, you know, for those of us who maybe travel less and try to start doing new adventures, or for people who are, you know, scared to try things, like having grace for yourself and being willing to understand that it might not look the way you thought it would is really important, you know, advice that all of you gave. And I think, you know, expectations are, you know, with your communications with your partners, all those kinds of things, bringing caregivers along if you can, maybe your grandma, maybe a, you know, a friend. I think there's so many amazing tips and tricks that came here. We will, we're already over time, so I'm gonna start wrapping us up here, but we are going to put a lot of resources on the website. You guys who attended, you know, you'll get an email with the link to this webinar and it'll have all these resources on there. We'll have the packing list from Christy, which is amazing, and some websites. And I know that Shannon is going to be following up with some more tips and tricks on Instagram and Facebook and our social media. So I just want to take time to say thank you. Got great thank yous coming in the chat. Thank you everybody for joining us. A huge thank you to all of you for being with us today and sharing your experiences, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the ugly, the challenging part of all of this. It's inspired me to maybe try to do a little bit more. I get so nervous.
You can do it.
I know. I've got an 11-year-old who's like 75 pounds and like cannot hold up his own head or anything. So it's like moving around is hard, but I'm going to try. I'm inspired by all of you. Thank you for sharing. And I hope we'll have you back again for another conversation down the road. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Everyone. This was great.
Safe travels. Happy, fun travels, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.